front tonight, how the government spends your money. Just 2 days ago, in order to balance the federal budget, the Reagan administration revealed that an additional $75 billion will have to be cut over the next 2 years. $30 billion of the cuts will come out of defense spending. The rest, $45 billion, from social programs like food stamps. Food stamps. For all its flaws, the controversial program has done a lot to eliminate hunger in America. But now, as in most federal programs, the cutbacks are coming.
The food stamp program will be restored to its original purpose, to assist those without resources to purchase sufficient nutritional food. We will, however, save $1.8 billion in fiscal year 1982 by removing from eligibility those who are not in real need or who are abusing the program.
Interestingly enough, at about the same time the president was calling for his cuts, a House subcommittee was also looking hard at the food stamp system. In a virtually unpublicized report, the subcommittee said that fraud and mismanagement in the program were costing the taxpayers as much as $1.6 billion a year. Nobody seemed to notice at that time that the amount the president said needed to be cut from the program, $1.8 billion, was almost exactly the amount being lost or stolen from it each year. Well, for the last 9 months, Geraldo Rivera and a team of 2020 investigators have been taking a hard look at the food stamp program. Here is our special hour-long investigative report, The Great Food Stamp Scandal. Geraldo?
Thanks, Hugh. Money stamps. That's what the crooks and the cheats call these food stamp coupons. Money stamps. Because on the black market, tens of millions of dollars worth of these are floating around. And to the thieves who are buying and selling them, they are just as good as money. After speaking with hundreds of people in a dozen American cities, we found that food stamps are being used to feed the needy, but also to feed the greedy. The food stamp program was designed to feed hungry Americans, and thankfully, it's been basically successful. But whatever else the food stamp program is or is supposed to be, it has also become a subsidy for alleged criminals, like this unsavory group, arrested 6 weeks ago in New York City for conspiring to defraud the federal government. Here in San Francisco, the hidden camera catches a crooked grocer who thinks he's buying more than $100,000 worth of stolen food stamps for $23,000 in cash. Unfortunately for him, the guy selling the stamps was an undercover federal agent. The leader of the food stamp bandits was a San Francisco grocer named Mahmoud Ghanem.
I was greedy like anybody else. $100,000. See, life is based on capitalism, money. So you show me a guy with $100,000, he won't take it to $20,000.
Ghanem and 48 other grocers were arrested last year when federal authorities broke up 2 nationwide rings allegedly dealing in stolen food stamps. Aside from San Francisco, these conspiracies operated in Denver, Chicago, and New York City.
It's costing the taxpayers a lot of money, a great deal of money, based on what I've seen and the type of abuses I've seen in the program.
Glenn Cook is an assistant U.S. attorney in Baltimore, where federal agents again used hidden cameras to catch a thief, this time buying stolen food stamps from a federal agent, who made sure the camera could see him counting his money. There have already been 47 indictments in Baltimore, with at least 60 more expected at any time.
Unless you take some steps, you are inviting what's going to become a disaster. We might as well go up there and throw it out the window.
Leland McNabb is a prosecutor in Memphis, where computers are routinely used to catch food stamp cheats. There have been 77 federal indictments so far in Memphis, with more to come. In Wichita, it was a local hood who got busted after putting a gun to the head of an undercover agent during a transaction involving stolen food stamps. In Philadelphia, a grocer and his family got caught buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of food stamp authorizations. Afraid to come out in the open, the grocer had his customer slip the stolen stamps through a slot in his door.
This is not minor abuse. This is massive, overwhelming abuse that the country will not stand for.
But this scandal is not merely about the tens of millions of tax dollars that are being ripped off. It's also about what that stolen money is being used for. You see, all across the country, food stamps paid for by your tax money have been used by gangsters to buy cars and jewelry and television sets, and in South Carolina, heavy weapons.
The weapons included conventional shotguns, rifles, pistols, semi-automatic weapons, machine guns, and 2 lightweight anti-tank rifles.
And it gets even worse than that. As ABC News reported 2 weeks ago, a major ring trafficking in heroin was, according to federal officials, actually being financed with stolen food stamps. We know by now what heroin can do to people. The fact that food stamps are being used to buy heroin is perhaps the best evidence of just how badly a noble ideal has been perverted. Tragic because it is a noble ideal, whose roots can be traced to the Great Depression, when the federal government began distributing surplus food to hungry people. During the late 30s and early 40s, stamps were first used, redeemable for various surplus commodities. But it was only after President Kennedy made a visit to a depressed area of West Virginia that the establishment of a truly national program was directed.
In Davie, West Virginia, a young couple with only $100 a month. They have to feed 8 growing boys. They regard the food stamp program as the salvation of their family budget.
President Kennedy had a vision, the elimination of hunger in America. And even though the food stamp program has been riddled by fraud, it's done much to achieve its noble goal. Food stamps now help feed nearly 23 million people in this country. And today in rural Kentucky, 41-year-old Flossie Durbin and her 6 children are just as dependent on food stamps as was that West Virginia family mentioned by President Kennedy more than 20 years ago. Flossie's husband is an out-of-work coal miner, and the economic prospects for their children, well, they're not bright. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Working coal mines and stuff.
Well, now we manage pretty well, but we ain't got no what you call whole lot.
When Flossie says she doesn't have a whole lot, she's understating her family's situation. At the end of the food stamp month, we found the refrigerator bare.
How difficult is it for you to make your money, to stretch out your money, to make your food budget last?
It's a whole lot, because it's a lot of things I could use that I do without.
Like what?
Well, like milk mostly and meat.
Without food stamps, the Broyle family of Baltimore would be in a desperate fix. Walter Broyle is permanently disabled, his wife Margaret unable to find work.
Oh, it puts food on our table when we have no other way of getting food.
Is it literally that? Is it really going hungry or being fed? Is that the difference it makes?
Yes.
Arlene Robinson of Washington, D.C. receives $216 a month in free food stamps. That works out to $7.20 a day to feed herself and 5 dependent children. Because she says it is not enough, Arlene supplements her food supply with these end-of-the-month gifts from the Community of Hope, a local Washington, D.C. charity.
What they give me for food stamps now doesn't allow me really to feed them a balanced diet. And I just get 1 pack of hamburger, in which that hamburger has to stretch like 2 or 3 meals.
I mean, you're not traveling first class on food stamps.
No way. If I was traveling first class, believe me, my icebox would be full.
With the imminent cutbacks in the food stamp program, all of the people we've talked to face an effective reduction in benefits, amounting to about 10% a year. It is our contention, however, that the cutback would be virtually unnecessary if the widespread fraud you're about to see could just be stopped. Stop the fraud, and the federal government admits it could save as much as $1.5 billion tax dollars a year, at least 60 million in New York City alone. All across the country, the crooks, in essence, are stealing food off the tables of the poor.
What if I told you in one city alone we found $60 million worth of fraud from the top?
I believe.
Would it make you angry?
Of course it makes me angry, because not only am I suffering, but my kids are really the ones who's doing the suffering.
To understand how the system is suffering, you have to understand how it's supposed to work. Until 1978, food stamp recipients had to pay something for them. For instance, to get $125 in food stamps, eligible recipients had to put up $50 of their own money. Now that requirement is gone, and the stamps are free. And once they're out there on the street, the stamps are just like money. Oh, they're supposed to be used strictly for food, but as you've already seen, you can use food stamps to buy just about anything. The federal government pays the entire cost of the program, but it's the state or local government which is responsible for getting the stamps in the hands of the eligible people. So all different delivery systems have sprung up all across the country. In New York City, where much of this investigative report takes place, the system is supposed to work this way. A recipient is mailed a document called an authorization to participate, an ATP. The ATP shows the dollar amount the recipient is entitled to. All he or she has to do is take the ATP to an authorized check cashing agency or bank branch, show some identification, then cash in the ATP for the appropriate amount of food stamps. As you can see, the ATP, the food stamp authorization, is the key document. And as you're about to see, these ATPs have been stolen where they're printed, where they are processed, and where they're mailed. The crooks range from big-time thugs to small-time cheats, like this one. The so-called welfare queen of Jacksonville, who agreed to make this training film for the government after getting caught conspiring to sell between $75,000 and $80,000 worth of stolen food stamps.
And the going rate in Florida or in Jacksonville, where I sold my stamps, was 50 cents on the dollar. So if I took $500 worth of food stamps to my buyer, I would get $250 cash.
One admitted buyer of stolen food stamps is 77-year-old Fred Cohen of New York. Between June and November of last year, Fred ran a small-time food stamp fencing operation, cashing stolen food stamp authorizations, those ATPs, worth about $19,000. In just 6 months' time at this branch of Manufacturers Hanover Trust, Fred admitted forging hundreds of different signatures on hundreds of ATPs. He said it was like stealing candy from a baby.
So you went to the bank 60 times to cash forged ATPs.
Right.
And the bank never questioned it.
The tellers never questioned.
Never questioned. Never said, hey, wait a second, I want to check the signature or one thing or the other. Never.
Never.
I mean, it's the easiest robbery there ever was.
Right.
And you got about $19,000.
Right.
You think you're going to go to jail now?
Well, that I don't know. That I don't know.
Fred got lucky. Recognizing his age and ill health, the judge only gave him a suspended sentence. On the other hand, most food stamp crooks don't even get that. As a matter of fact, most never get caught, which breeds a kind of arrogance. This fellow says he's the superintendent of the tenement building he's living in. He's also an admitted thief, who wasn't at all shy about showing the food stamp authorization he had just stolen out of someone else's mailbox.
Who stole it?
I did.
You stole it? What, from a mailbox?
Yep.
But you've done this before. You've gotten stolen food stamps. And how many times?
Many times.
Many times.
Many times.
When his neighbors heard the crook bragging about his misdeeds, there was an angry confrontation.
But you might be breaking in my mailbox. Well, listen, come across the street and I'll break in your mailbox, mother. What? You ain't gonna break in my mailbox. Come across the street then. See that bad?
This kind of relatively small-time larceny cost the food stamp program nationwide millions and millions of dollars. But it is just that, small time, especially when compared to the organized high-level theft we're about to document for you. This is the real hemorrhaging in the food stamp program. Look at this example. What I have on my desk represents $1 million worth of your money, tax money, in the form of food stamps fraudulently negotiated in violation of federal law. Obtained by 2020, this $1 million is just part of a massive theft involving various conspiracies to defraud the federal government. This is $1 million tax dollars, but it's just a piece of the action in the great food stamp scandal. It's a nationwide problem, but this $1 million mound was accumulated just in New York City. These are copies of food stamp authorizations. They are all ridiculous forgeries. This one is my personal favorite. Signed with an X, this ATP was successfully cashed by some crook who walked away with 151 tax dollars. Here are some other specifics. Item, New York City. This 2020 investigation has uncovered many instances of obvious fraud, but perhaps none is as blatant as this one. It involves the Public Service Check Cashers Corporation located here in Harlem. Last August, during a 6-day period, 542 ATPs, worth about $53,000, were cashed at Public Service. There were 3 problems. First of all, the 542 food stamp authorizations were all in numerical sequence, which means that of all the hundreds of check cashing agencies and bank branches available much closer to their homes, 542 people in a row all decided to come as a group to Harlem to pick up their food stamps, which brings up problem number 2. According to the addresses on the ATPs, the 542 people all live in a beachfront community called Far Rockaway, Far Rockaway is 20 miles from Harlem. Now, it doesn't take a genius or a Sherlock Holmes to figure out that somebody in that check-cashing agency fraudulently negotiated 542 of these food stamp authorizations, documents that were stolen either from the computer center where they were printed, the post office from where they were supposed to be mailed, or someplace in between. But in case there was even a remaining shred of a doubt, all the city officials had to do was come out here and ask the people whose names appear on these documents, the legitimate food stamp recipients, if indeed they received their food stamps for this month. Now, Lori, just for the record, is this your signature?
No, it isn't.
Did you and 541 of your friends get together one day and take the bus or the train, the hour-and-a-half ride to Harlem to cash in your food stamp authorizations?
No, we didn't.
How do you feel about this?
I think it's terrible, and I just think that something should be done about it.
Would you sign your signature right under this one so we can compare the two?
Yes.
These aren't even close. And notice this, Lori. The same person that signed your signature also signed Linda's and Mary's also. We asked Andrew and Hannah Solner, two of the nation's most respected handwriting experts, to check the signatures. Should anybody who is looking at those documents have spotted those forgeries?
Yes, they should. It should be obvious and they should spot it.
There's no question that somebody should have been alerted to it and inquired further.
If they cared.
If they cared.
Joel Rabin is one of the officers of the Public Service Check Cashing Agency. According to the experts, somebody at Public Service had to be involved in this fraud for this to happen.
I would imagine that that's a distinct possibility. I'd have to say yeah.
In mid-July, only after 2020 informed New York City about our allegations, Public Service finally lost its right to deal in food stamps. Federal prosecutors are currently investigating several of the company's employees. Some more specifics. Item: the Payamatic scam. With approximately 85 branch offices, Payamatic is a multi-million-dollar corporation, the largest chain of check-cashing agencies in New York City. 2020 has obtained copies of 275 stolen ATPs from one of Payamatic's branch offices. They're worth about $17,000. According to our experts, all are forgeries. Federal officials tell 2020 that this particular incident is just a tiny part of a pattern of corruption. Payamatic refused comment. Item: the RLJ Check Cashing Agency. It recently went out of business after being terminated from the food stamp program. Evidence obtained by 2020 shows that the company had cashed $2 million worth of forged and stolen ATPs each year for the past 2 years. No one at RLJ has been charged with a crime, and no demand has even been made by the city for the return of the stolen money. The huge city agency which runs the food stamp program is called the Human Resources Administration. Jack Krosskoff is the current commissioner.
But I want to assure you that we are deeply concerned about the integrity of the food stamp program, have always been concerned. Wherever there has been an instance of potential fraud, that situation has been investigated by our staff and then referred to the appropriate authorities, either in the City Department of Investigation or in the federal agencies which have jurisdiction.
But just exactly how interested has the city government really been in exposing fraud in the food stamp program? Not very. That at least is the contention of Victor Hakeem, Bob Wortham, Ed Coyne, Myron Avon, David Feinstein, and other dedicated past and present New York City investigators. They decided to tell 2020 about gross abuses in the food stamp program, but only after their cries for official action allegedly fell on deaf ears.
Knowing that I was risking my job, at my age especially, and my pension, I did it because I felt I had an obligation, a moral obligation to the taxpayers and the people who were paying my salary to go to somebody who might possibly do something to stop the pattern of cover-up that's been going on in my agency for years.
David Feinstein has worked as an investigator for the city for the last 14 and a half years. A Korean War hero who received a Silver Star for gallantry in action. Feinstein also works nights and weekends at a department store to make ends meet.
I got tired and frustrated, and I just was hoping that somebody would stop what's going on. We couldn't.
As you can imagine, with so very much at stake in their personal lives, it is rare for inside sources to go public with their allegations. As a result of their cooperation with us, 5 of those fellows are currently under investigation by New York City.